بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وآله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Continuing with the Book of Knowledge, we talked previously about the sciences, what is good and what is bad, and we talked about how all of the religious sciences are good. Section previously noticed by interaction with the world and interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, and that this interaction manifests in either doing things or abstaining from things or in believing things. So more detail on this. As for the science of interaction, it is the knowledge of the states of the heart, such as fear, hope, contentment, truthfulness, sincerity, and so on. So each of these is a state of the heart. The knowledge of this is the knowledge of interaction. This is the knowledge that elevated the great scholars, and their mention became renowned due to the realization of it. Like Sufyan al-Thawri, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Ahmad, rahimahumullah ta'ala, and all of those famous scholars that we know of, right? Although they're more famously known for their fiqh or for their hadith, but the reality of the matter is that the elevation, right, and the progress that these people made in those sciences was due to the fact that they had already perfected the science of interaction, right? And there were forerunners in the science of interaction. That is what blessed their efforts in other forms of ulum and sciences, right? But what happened after people lost touch of this science? The rank of those called jurists and scholars fell from the high stations because they busied themselves with the external forms of knowledge like fiqh and the words of a hadith, without pushing themselves to reach its true essence and act upon its hidden aspects. So Al-Ghazali is talking about his time, that those people who are labeled as jurists and scholars in my time, they are not of the same status, of the same stature as the example that I've mentioned, for the simple reason that they focus on external forms of knowledge, but what the essence of ilm is, that's something that they've forgotten, right? Now, he's giving some examples. You find the jurist speaking about zihar, it was a pre-Islamic form of divorce, and li'an, a mutual imprecation to dissolve a marriage, horse racing, and archery. He derives intricate rulings that take up a long time, and there's no need of any of those issues, right? But on the other hand, he does not speak about ikhlas, sincerity, or about riya, warn against showing off. While this is an individual obligation on this scholar, right? For neglecting these things leads to destruction, while the former, like things like zihar and li'an, they are a collective obligation. Not everyone needs to know all those intricate details. Now, if he were asked about the reason for neglecting self-examination regarding sincerity and showing off, he would have no answer. But if he were asked about the reason for busying himself with issues of li'an and archery, he would say, this is a collective obligation. The Musannif goes on to say he would be truthful, that these things are a collective obligation, but it is hidden from him that arithmetic is also a collective obligation. So why does he not busy himself with it? So things like maths, medicine, media in some forms, all of these are collective obligations. But you don't hear people giving it the same praise as you would someone studying the religious sciences, which fall in the category of collective obligations, right? So the soul deceives him because its goal of showing off and seeking fame is achieved through debate and not arithmetic, right? So this is actually a deception of your soul. If you forget the most important and the more important things for those which are communal obligations, uh, things which you're not really required for, that's because you want to be known for that, most likely, right? So it's a deception of the soul that you would busy yourself in some aspects of communal obligations, that which in society have acquired a form of appreciation or a form of status, right? So basically, he's simply suggesting that more of our focus should be on the science of interaction, learning about the maladies of the heart, refining our character, then to focus on the subsidiary branches of no, that words have been altered and distorted, and meanings have been shifted to what the righteous predecessor did not intend. Right? Now he's going to give you a few words in which he talks about the shift in meaning. The term was originally coined for something else, then its meaning shifted to something entirely different and new. And that is a source of lots of problems. Mentions four words. Among them is the word fiqh, right? The scholars of his time, they used it with a specific meaning, restricting it to the knowledge of the ancillary branches of Islamic law and their reasons. The kind of fiqh that we study today, that is now, in our times too, is also known as fiqh. The term fiqh in the early era referred to knowledge of the path to the hereafter, awareness of the subtle flaws of the soul, the corruptors of deeds, the strength of understanding the insignificance of this world, the intensity of yearning for the bliss of the hereafter, the dominance of fear over the heart. Right? Included all of these different aspects that usually are not considered when we talk about fiqh today. Therefore, Al-Hasan Basri rahimahullah ta'ala said, the faqih is the one who is detached from this world, eager for the hereafter, insightful in his religion, persistent in worshipping his Lord, pious, abstaining from harming Muslims and also non-Muslims, if it's without a just cause, chaste concerning their wealth, and sincere in advising them. Right? Now think about the last time you studied fiqh or talked to someone about fiqh and they started talking to you about these things, about worship, right? About zuhud, abstaining from people's wealth, right? No one usually talks about this because in our times as well, that is not what fiqh is usually considered. Their use of the term fiqh to refer to the knowledge of the hereafter was more common because it did not deal with giving legal rulings, fatwas, but rather encompassed that in a general and comprehensive way. So the word fiqh included fiqh as we know it today, like legal rulings. It included theology, aqid, creed. It also included ihsan, the knowledge and understanding of the heart and its related issues, right? So Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala actually defined fiqh in this comprehensive and holistic sense. He said that fiqh is ma'rifatun nafs ma laha wa ma alayha. It is the knowledge of the soul, knowledge of oneself, what benefits it and what harms it. What benefits it in terms of beliefs, in terms of what should be the state of the heart, and in terms of what laws should one be following. Similarly, at what harms it, what kind of beliefs are going to harm you, what kind of states of the heart are going to harm you, and what kinds of things are haram and you should abstain from them, else they're going to be a source of harm. Right? So here's where the schism happened between fiqh as used by the pious predecessors and fiqh as it was used in the time of al-Ghazali, and from there on, is still being used that way. From this specific usage arose a deception that led people to focus solely on the knowledge of external legal rulings and neglect the knowledge of interaction with the hereafter. The second term is al-ilm, knowledge. Now it is used to refer to the knowledge, it was used to refer to the knowledge of Allah Almighty, His attributes, His actions, His wisdom in ordaining the hereafter. But then people restricted the meaning of al-ilm, and now in most cases they use it to refer to debates on jurisprudential issues. Even if that person is ignorant of Quranic exegesis and hadith, they would still say that this person has a lot of ilm because you can talk about the ancillary branches of Islamic law. The third term is Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, right? It was used to indicate to seeing all matters as coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was a vision that cuts off attention to the causes and intermediaries, resulting in trust and contentment with what Allah decides for us. Now, however, it has become a term for the science of theological discourse on fundamental principles, and that is among the disapproved matters according to the predecessors. Yani, discourses theological in nature, in terms of aqidah, were not something that the predecessors used to do. The Sahaba or the Tabi'in, they would used to avoid this. It was only in later stages that people started to talk about aqidah in a way that Greek philosophers used to do. The fourth term is at-tadhkir wa-dhikr, reminder and remembrance, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and remind, for indeed the reminder benefits the believers. And the Prophet ﷺ also said, when you pass by the gardens of paradise, graze therein. The companions asked, what are the gardens of paradise? To which he replied, the gatherings of remembrance. Right? So it was literally remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and reminding each other of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they shifted this to storytelling and what the storytellers' gatherings contain today of digressions and nonsensical speech. Right? So it turned into like orations and sermons rather than actual dhikr. Now, it is important, right? Um, orations and storytelling has important effects on society. It has benefits. So, on that note, the Musannif makes a recommendation. Whoever busies himself in his admonition with stories of the past should know that the most of what is narrated in that regard is not established. The things you're going to use in your stories and your sermons, tread carefully because a lot of it has no basis. For example, they narrate that Yusuf, Joseph alayhi salam, untied his waist wrapper that he saw Yaqub biting his hand, and that David Dawood alayhi salam prepared Uriah to be killed. So such narrations are harmful, so you should avoid them. For the very reason that they're historically incorrect and they represent Anbiya alayhimus salam in a light which is not befitting of them, by accusing them of being like normal human beings in terms of following their desires and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-iyadu billah, for any one of us to hold such an aqidah. As for digressions and nonsensical speech, they are among the most harmful things to the common people because they include the mention of love, union, and pain of separation. Like this happens in Sufi halaqas and circles. They talk about love, al-hubb al-haqiqi wal-hubb al-majazi, real love and fake love, and they talk about uniting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the pain of separation. Things you usually find in rom-coms, for example, right? The problem is that in those Sufi circles, most of the people who are present are unrefined. Their inner selves filled with desires and love for external forms, right? So the Sufi master may be talking about love and joining with the mahbub, the one you love, and that person might be thinking about the affair that they're having, or some other person that they're madly in love with but cannot connect with, right? So because most people, their hearts are unrefined, such talk and such things, or the use of vocabulary, which was not found in our tradition originally. This stirs up nothing in their hearts except what is hidden within themselves, igniting the fire of desire within them, causing them to cry out, and all of this is mere corruption because this is not from the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but rather the love of this dunya. Then he cites an example of an extreme of this case. Perhaps the digression contains broad claims about the love of Allah Almighty, and in this is great harm. A group of farmers abandoned their farming and made such claims. Yani going way beyond what was normally prescribed, these people ended up abandoning their duties and abandoning the ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any tasawwuf which leads you to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed corrupt and wrong. And the fifth last term that he mentions over here is wisdom, al-hikmah. And wisdom means knowledge and acting upon it, right? So a combination of ilm and amal. Ibn Qutaybah rahimahullah ta'ala said, a man is not wise until he combines knowledge and action. But this term is now used in this era to refer to the physician and the astrologer, right? In our times, the word hakim was used for just a few years ago, a few decades, sorry. It was used for those practicing herbal medicine or Greek medicine, for example, right? The word hakim was used for such people. So you see how there is a shift and a distinction between the original word and how the word is being used today. And these are just a few examples. Um, there are a lot of words, even today, which hold different meanings to what they were originally intended. And that's where you see the cause of disagreement, and that is the cause of people engaging in religious sciences uh, in a non-holistic manner, right? And this is something that needs to be addressed, right? But obviously, we're going to leave it for those asatis of those ulum to do so in their own classes. Although a brief discussion was done on the praiseworthy sciences, now for a bit more detail. Section on praiseworthy sciences. Know that praiseworthy sciences are divided into two categories. Number one, the first is praiseworthy to the utmost degree, and the more there is of it, the better and more excellent it is. So, what kind of knowledge is that the more you increase, the better it is? This is the knowledge of Allah Almighty, His attributes, His actions, His wisdom in ordaining the hereafter after this world. This knowledge sought for itself, leading to the happiness of the hereafter. Yani if you seek this knowledge or the knowledge itself, this will lead to happiness in the hereafter. It is the ocean whose depths cannot be reached, and those who delve into it only circle its shores and edges according to what is facilitated for them. Yani who can completely understand the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His attributes, His actions, His wisdom? It's not possible for us human beings. لا يحيطون بعلمه إلا بما شاء. We have no possession over the knowledge of Allah except for that which He grants us, right? And though people are in stages, some get more, some get less, some get nothing, right? What Allah facilitates us, that is the knowledge from His attributes and His action and wisdom that we get. And that is something that one should make dua of. That Ya Allah, grant me your ma'rifah. The second category of praiseworthy knowledge is that it is only praiseworthy to a specific extent, which is what we mentioned regarding collective obligations, right? So you don't delve into the intricacies, you just acquire that which is necessary, right? And leave all the other discussions happening in the subject. Thus, there is a need, limitation, and thoroughness in each of them, each of the collective obligations, right? So, knowing that there are two types of knowledge, the Musannif mentions, be one of two types of people, either preoccupied with yourself or devoted to others after rectifying yourself. Either what concerns you is only you, your salvation, in the sense that you are reforming yourself, you are correcting your character, your ethics, your behavior, your worship. Or to a degree when you have been cleansed and purified and you're ready, that you would busy yourself in helping others along the same path in this journey. So be one of these two people. Beware of busying yourself with what benefits others before rectifying yourself. Okay? Helping others before you help yourself, this is a sign of stupidity at the very least. What is the point of making sure everyone else goes to Jannah and you're the one going the opposite direction? So beware of busying yourself with what benefits others before rectifying yourself. Focus on rectifying your inner self and purifying it from blameworthy traits like greed, envy, showing off, self-admiration, before rectifying your outward appearance. Right? This will come later, Allah willing, in the quarter of destructive matters. So we're in the first quarter, and details of these discussions are going to take place in the third quarter of this book, inshallah. If you have not rectified yourself, do not busy yourself with collective obligations, for there are many among creation who fulfill them. Whoever destroys himself seeking the betterment of others is foolish. His example is like someone with scorpions under his clothes who is busy swatting flies away from others. If you have rectified yourself and purified it, and how distant that is, then busy yourself with collective obligations, right? Observe gradualness in this, stage by stage, step by step. Obviously, one cannot be completely purified ever. There's always room for improvement. So balance is necessary. Yani, you should be engaged both in purifying yourself and in other forms of collective obligations, if that is what you choose. But the ratios should be accordingly, right? It shouldn't be 20% of your time rectifying yourself and 80% in collective obligations. The opposite makes more sense. 80% of the time correcting yourself, purifying yourself, 20 in collective obligations. They don't need necessarily need to be separated. Those two things can happen at the same time, but our focus and our intentions should mostly be on the science of interaction. And this is very important, as he's mentioning it again and again, that it would be foolish of us to neglect this first time, the science of interaction, for other forms of collective obligations. Now, how do you pursue collective obligations? How do you observe gradualness in it? Begin with the book of Allah Almighty, then the Sunnah of His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then the Quranic sciences, like exegesis, nasikh mansub, abrogated verses, al-muhkam mutashabih, clear and ambiguous verses, and so on. Then likewise with the Sunnah, after the Quran and Sunnah, you pursue with jurisprudence and its principles, and so on with the rest of the sciences, as much as your lifespan allows and time permits. So from each of these sciences, learn that which is necessary. Once you've completed all the sciences, then if you want to delve deeper into one of them, that's totally up to you. Do not spend your entire life on a single science seeking to exhaust it, for knowledge is vast and life is short. These sciences are tools meant for something beyond them. And anything sought for something else should not lead to forgetting the intended goal. Even Quran and the Quranic sciences, they're not an ends in themselves, rather they are means to an end. What is the purpose of revealing the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Right? That is to correct your relation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and prepare for the akhirah. Because this is a book of guidance. Getting the guidance, that is the goal of the Quran. Okay? So if something like the Quran is not an end in itself, then anything that comes out of it will also not be an end in itself. Right? So this is an important um, reminder that Al-Ghazali is giving us. Do not spend your entire life on a single science, seeking to exhaust it, for knowledge is vast and life is short. These sciences are tools meant for something beyond them, and anything sought for something else should not lead to forgetting the intended goal. Allahu alam, bisawab.